Chapter 10. Settling Down. After the person leading Xiaoqing spoke the same dialogue about how promoting her rank would result in a better residence and more benefits, he departed. Xiaoqing started exploring all over the place. Sizing up the house she would only be living in for a short amount of time. She quickly finished her walk-around and placed Xiao Baozi onto the bed to allow him to play by himself for a bit. Xiao Baozi poured out a pile of crystals and began to count. Xiaoqing had sewed him a pouch which he used to carry the crystals for snacks. Right when Xiaoqing began to rearrange the house, a tall and graceful man came over. Wearing a pair of glasses, he appeared quite scholarly and refined. Sensing Xiaoqing's suspicions, he hurriedly introduced himself. "I just live right beside you. I heard that there was a new person moving in, so I came to look. Since we're going to be neighbors, if you ever need my help in anything, don't be afraid to ask." After getting to know him a bit, Xiaoqing politely sent him off. The entire time that man called Li Jing was just staring at Xiaoqing's chest. Even a baby would be able to realize that he is not an upright man. But through Li Jing, Xiaoqing was able to figure out a few things. For example, even if you are a superhuman, you can't just freeload. They are required to participate in a search for supplies at set dates, and half of the supplies found would go to the survivor base. Another example is that they could hire any ordinary person to do the tedious chores they didn't want to do. Just by giving them a little food, you could hire a maid to manage house chores every day. It goes without saying that the delicate and pretty young maidens get chosen first. Regular people usually would have to do physical labor in exchange for food, but the amount of food they received in return were small. Many would have no choice but to turn to earning extra income. Understanding the specific situation, Xiaoqing decided to sign up for a weekly supplies investigation team to stay longer in the survival base and live there without being conspicuous. Within the investigation team, there were two groups of people. A regular people squad would search the nearby bases. They would obtain only a little amount of the resource, yet the dangers were huge. The other group was the superhumans, who would have to go further away from the base. Since the places they went to hasn't been explored before, they received a greater amount of the natural resources discovered. Xiaoqing calculated a bit. She still needed a water jar, a bathtub and a sofa. Thus, she made preparations to check out the market and create a group to do some spontaneous investigating. The people living at the market district had fantastic oddities of every description to sell. Carrying Xiao Baozi, Xiaoqing saw gold ornaments, bizarre toy gadgets, and even R-rated adult movies. But very few people would buy those items. Now that it is the apocalypse, those luxurious goods already have no use. Using the gold ornaments as an example, if you wear it while you fight, it would only be cumbersome. Apart from it being flashy, there was no other use. One piece of biscuit would be able to exchange for several of those gold ornaments. Rather quickly, Xiaoqing soon arrived at a place where they sold old furniture. Even the worst of the items were about 90% new, yet the store was arranged in a place where it would be of no interest to anyone. Xiaoqing chose a large tub and a sofa, and was able to simply use a packaged cracker in exchange. The seller even shed tears of gratitude and offered to help her transport it back. Seeing his skinny arms and legs, Xiaoqing decided to give up on having him help her carry it back. In any case, right in front of the store was a labor market, where she could employ a healthy, sturdy man to help carry the things back. It's not like she lacks the food anyways. At the labor market, there were loads of pretty and flirtatious females decked in makeup and nice dresses, trying to sell their bodies to gain some food. With a quick sweep around, Xiaoqing noticed a man squatting in the corner. This was due to his gorgeous-looking muscles, not too exaggerated or bulging out, but instead sleek and lean. Even the curves of his muscles looked really appealing. The only thing that would cause someone to be regretful would be that his muscles were covered in scars of all sizes. Some old, some new, repeatedly overlapping. With shaggy hair and his upper body exposed, he sat in the corner. He wasn't like the others that were encircling others and trying to sell themselves. Instead, Xiaoqing felt that he was like a languid leopard. When Xiaoqing's gaze swept over him, his muscles right away quickly became taut, entering high alert. This caused Xiaoqing to be curious on what he did previously. Thus, Xiaoqing firmly decided to hire him. "Help me move some things, I'll give you 2 pieces of biscuits." The man humbly lifted his head, his 5 facial features surprisingly outstanding. He had a heroic countenance, a high nose bridge, And most of all, those eyes were filled with spirit. Okay. The man's voice was a bit hoarse and rough. He stood up in front of Xiaoqing, revealing his height to her. No less than 180 centimeters. The surrounding people let out a loud exhale, each going off on their own way, leaving the man by himself. Lifting up the sofa and pressing the bathtub to his side, he followed Xiaoqing forward. The scars on his back were even larger in quantity than the ones in the front, repeatedly overlapping. Some were even new wounds. Without any intentions to investigate, she led him onwards. Chapter 11: The Taciturn Man. Xiaoqing followed the man from behind, carefully sizing him up. His waist had a scar around 20 centimeters long. Splitting the area near the spinal column on his back was another scar. From one look, it was clear that this was an old scar. A horizontal one across his spinal column. There was also one on his nape that wasn't too obvious. It seemed to be caused by a bullet directly penetrating his nape. His body really did have a lot of wounds. If these wounds were on an average person's body, they would have already had hemiplegia or lost their lives. Yet here he was still in good condition and living. Struggling with life or death situations for so many years, Xiaoqing didn't want to admit, but the scars on her body were also more than most men. That was how her curiosity was slowly evoked. As they both stepped into the house at the same time, the moment the man placed the sofa down, Xiaoqing lightly patted his shoulder. Immediately after, Xiaoqing was able to see that man's shoulder muscles tensed up, and with force he shot his shoulder backwards. The force his shoulders carried could have probably directly broken a person's bone. Moreover, the direction it was heading towards was Xiaoqing's rib. If that bone was to break, it would directly rupture the lungs inside. Xiaoqing's reaction was quick. Holding the man's shoulders, following his arms, she lightly pressed down on his shoulders. Because of the change to her body, with Xiaoqing's superhuman strength, it should be easy to stop his movements. Yet she still felt her hand going numb. Realizing what he was doing, the man proficiently crouched down and held his head. Not at all sleek and smooth, but definitely powerful. His waist became taut, as if he was bracing himself for something. From Xiaoqing's perspective, the trousers covering the border of his waist was extremely appealing and sexy. Even the scars simply enhanced its seductiveness. If it were not the apocalypse, this would definitely be a man that many women would like. It's a pity that it was the apocalypse. Even if the man was handsome and strong, in most women's eyes, they still cannot be compared to superhumans. The taciturn man was still holding his head, waiting for the fist and feet to attack his body. But what arrived was just a somewhat pale hand, holding a cracker within its palm. "Could you help me place the bathtub inside?" The man silently glanced at Xiaoqing, nodded his head, and lifted the tub up to bring it inside. Actually, with a bathtub in the apocalypse, there really wasn't too much use for it. After all, most of the water sources have been contaminated by the zombies, so drinking it will most likely lead to a misfortune, let alone taking a bath. After arranging the tub in place, the man silently stood to the side. He used his glances to ask Xiaoqing if there was anything else she needed help with. "Could you help me move the sofa so it's facing that direction?" Xiaoqing softly asked. When the man bent forward to move the sofa, Xiaoqing gently placed her palm on his lower back. Even though once again the man tensed up his muscles, this time, he didn't attack. Rather, he forcefully restrained himself. Feeling the muscles underneath her palm containing such force from tensing up, Xiaoqing quickly took back her hand. But she unconsciously noticed that the man's earlobe had turned red. At the beginning, Xiaoqing had thought that he was tired. But now she discovered that although his usual expression hasn't changed, within his eyes a little bashfulness can be seen. She has never seen such an easily embarrassed mature man. He is such a tall big man too, but unexpectedly he contrasted from his demeanor. "This time, I really have to thank you," Xiaoqing smiled. "If I ever need any more help in the future, I'll definitely come find you." After, Xiaoqing once again saw this man's earlobe turn red. Not really understanding everything, Xiaoqing sent the man off, then closed the door. Although she was curious about this big, tall, taciturn man's past, but at present the most important thing was to increase her own strength. Other people's business, it's better not to be bothered. Curiosity killed the cat. After putting water in the bathtub, Xiaoqing stripped Xiao Baozi naked and placed him inside. White and smooth, his arms and legs were like pinched dough. That meaty feel was super addicting. Xiao Baozi wasn't afraid of the water. Within the bathtub he simply blew some bubbles, and just entrusted Xiao Qing to help him bathe. Xiao Baozi's behind was especially smooth. Children's skin have always been particularly sleek and smooth. His being a bit ice-cold resembled holding a gelatin dessert. After being washed clean by Xiao Qing, Xiao Baozi changed into an adorable bear outfit and was placed on top of the bed. Xiao Baozi wore his open pants outfit, pants that have a hole at the behind for infants before toilet training, and just crawled around the bed. When it was approximately dinner time, right when Xiao Qing was about to grab some crystals to fill her belly, there was a knock on the door. Opening the door, she saw her neighbor Li Jing. Smiling with elegance, he softly spoke. "I was reckoning that since you just arrived to the base, tonight you definitely wouldn't have made dinner. So, I was thinking to see if you would like to go to my place to eat. Now that I am here, sure enough, you really didn't make dinner." "It's nothing. It's just 2 people anyways, my child and I. Throw some stuff together and we'll be satisfied." Xiao Qing wasn't even feeling that hungry anyways. Even if she was, 2 pieces of crystal would have done the trick. However, it is a fact that she hadn't ate regular people food in a long time. Thus, after Li Jing's persistent invitations, she finally agreed. From the beginning, Xiao Qing had felt that Li Jing had some untoward thoughts towards her, but Xiao Qing didn't take it to heart. She was a very able person who could afford to be audacious. Arriving at Li Jing's house, she saw that Li Jing had merely made a few dishes. 3 meat, 3 vegetable, and there was fish and meat. Although the meat was stewed, and the fish wasn't fresh, this was the apocalypse. Fish and meat could be considered luxury goods, not even mentioning lush green vegetables and chicken drumsticks. Li Jing smiled in a reserved manner. "Originally I had made too many things, thank God you were coming over. Otherwise if it was kept for another meal, the taste just wouldn't be the same when you reheat it. I didn't expect that you were going to make such a sumptuous meal. I feel a bit inconveniencing." Xiao Qing smiled and sat across from Li Jing. Li Jing quickly poured her a cup of water to quench her throat. "Like I said, we are neighbors. In the future there will definitely be many times where we will be assisting each other. So let's not speak as if we're talking to strangers." Li Jing beamed, but if you looked carefully at his eyes you could see a weird gleam within that really demonstrated that he was just putting on airs. "Quickly try my skills." Li Jing picked up his chopstick and put a piece of meat in Xiao Qing's bowl. Unable to withstand his enthusiasm, she picked up the piece of meat and placed it in her mouth. It was just as she thought. The food arriving at her mouth, not only did it not give off any smell or flavor, it instead gave her a fierce vomiting urge. Chapter 12, You're Mine. It's no surprise that when Xiao Baozi drank the powdered milk, he made a complete mess and barfed everywhere. Xiao Qing had only taken 1 bite, but was already ready to tear out her stomach. Li Jing, seeing her reaction, promptly asked, "Is my cooking really bad?" "No, it's just that recently my stomach hasn't been feeling too well." Xiao Qing was unable to elaborate more. Li Jing narrowed his eyes then lightly laughed. "Even if your stomach isn't feeling well, you should still eat some stuff. If you don't eat, how could your body get better?" No, at this moment, Xiao Qing only had one thought in her mind, and that was to puke out everything in her stomach. "Sorry for the bother today. It's not your cooking skills. I just really can't eat anymore. Another day, invite me to try your cooking skills again." Watching Xiao Qing want to leave, Li Jing hurriedly replied, "If you don't want to eat these things, how about eating some fruit? I have a lot of fresh apples here, you can wait here. I'll bring you some." Not waiting for Xiao Qing's rejections, he went inside to go grab it. Xiao Qing, without any other option, sat down once again. Her stomach churning, she really just wanted to puke. Holding 2 bright red apples in his hand, and a cluster of bright green grapes, he handed Xiao Qing an apple. "You can bring the grapes for the baby to eat." Originally, Xiao Qing was going to reject his offer, but her stomach was too difficult to bear, so she received them. "I'm really not feeling well right now. Another day I'll invite you out to eat." Li Jing's eyes flashed with a hidden gleam of happiness. He thought that the medicine that he had secretly served to Xiao Qing had worked. Thus he continuously urged Xiao Qing to stay. Xiao Qing was soon about to throw up on his face. Even her smiling expression couldn't be maintained any longer. "I'm leaving first." Ignoring Li Jing's obstruction of her to leave, she quickly left a few words and departed. Once departed, Xiao Qing immediately felt Li Jing following from behind. Not saying a word, she quickly increased her pace. Using her pursuing technique that she had trained for many years, she easily threw off Li Jing. Once she threw off Li Jing, Xiaoqing immediately found a corner and puked everything out. Whatever amount she ate was whatever amount she threw up. After vomiting, Xiaoqing began to worry about the quilt-covered Xiaobaozi. Wiping her mouth and taking some mineral spring water to rinse out her mouth, she prepared to set off. After walking a few steps, she saw a familiar figure walking out from a tent. As before, his well-built back was visible and showed off his powerful lower back. He also discovered Xiaoqing, his body becoming rigid. Looking at his body, she realized there were quite a few new wounds. There were even more bruises on his body. Xiaoqing was originally planning on leaving, but when her gaze met the deep pair of eyes of the man, she stopped her steps. The man seemed to hesitate a bit. After a long while did he let out a low voice asking, "Darun, do you still need some able-bodied workers?" Darun, a title of respect towards superiors. Xiaoqing faintly knitted her eyebrows, her eyes falling onto the man's bruised and scarred chest, sneering. Asking a single woman if they need some able-bodied worker in the middle of the night. Aren't you scared I'll let my imaginations run wild and really want you to do some extra labor? The man evidently felt somewhat helpless, expressionless for a while. The moonlight from above enveloped his cheeks, revealing the new layer of pink. His lips quivering. I didn't have those thoughts. I know, I was just joking with you. Xiaoqing spurned herself for her nasty sense of taste and humor. She patted the man's shoulder. Are you able to tell me what you need? Medicine to reduce fever. His eyes shined for an instant, then in a blink of an eye dimmed down. Medicine in the apocalypse was extremely scarce. Majority of the medicine was secured by the base and provided to injured superhumans. The remaining portion could be exchanged with points, but these points were achieved through the exchange of food and other supplies. Not to mention the points required to exchange for medicine is extremely high. Men without superpowers could only count on their own strength. Even if they had joined the normal human investigation teams, the things they earned through that were just barely able to meet their daily needs. It is basically impossible for them to have a surplus of goods to exchange for points. Even if they lived in the most frugal manner, the gathered points still wouldn't be enough to exchange for the most common medicine. Therefore, since arriving at the apocalypse, normal humans that became sick really couldn't afford to be sick. I do have some. Xiaoqing had plundered quite a few medicine. It's a pity though that she had found out her and Xiaobaozi had a physique that wouldn't fall ill. Now these medicines she plundered had no use at all. Fortunately, she had still not thrown it away yet. Could you give me some? I could help you with some manual labor. Saying this, his cheeks turned red. He naturally knew that if this deal went down, he would be taking advantage of Xiaoqing too much. Sure, but I have a question I would like to ask you. Nodding her head, she asked, what did you do before? I was a soldier, but I retired due to an injury. Xiaoqing's impression of the man rose significantly. She had also retired from being a military personnel. Thus, in regards to military personnel, she had a somewhat favorable opinion of them. Not to mention this man had retired due to an injury, which was the exact same situation as Xiaoqing. How much do you need? I'm not too sure. Wrinkling his brows, he pushed open the tent's curtain, revealing a woman lying on a worn-out quilt. The woman looked around 50 to 60 of age, malnourished and sickly in appearance. A deep wound looking as if it was split open on her exposed thigh could be seen. As there was no immediate treatment, the wound had pus and blood oozing out, causing the air to have a grotesque smell. Feeling a bit embarrassed, he explained his situation. My mom's wound has become inflamed for quite some time. The smell is quite unpleasant. You might not want to stand too close. It's nothing. Xiaoqing did not increase her distance from the tent. Come to my place tomorrow. I don't have any medicine with me right now. Okay, but I don't have anything I can give you. Xiaoqing's gaze swept over the man's well-built muscles on his chest, with intentions to take advantage of him, as she touched his chest, smiling. No worries, from now on you'll just be mine. This honest man pulled back a bit, his face turning so red it could bleed blood. It was evident that he had never been teased like this before, and had no experience at all. His whole body turned as stiff as a board, until Xiaoqing's voice drifted into his ears. What's your name? Yan Hanqing, he reflexively answered. I'm Xiaoqing. Remember to come find me tomorrow. When Xiaoqing saw this upright man still having such a blank face, she couldn't hold back her smile, and turned to leave. Yan Hanqing waited until Xiaoqing was far away. Then did he realize his forehead was covered in sweat. Just Just now what did she say? Chapter 13 Good-Natured Man. Returning home, Xiaoqing scarcely noticed that Li Jing was completely shocked. He had given Xiaoqing an extra strong dose of knockout drugs, the type that could completely knock out a cow. Yet, not only did she not pass out at his house, she was able to walk so fast that she shook him off when he was tailing her. What knockout drug? That is total BS. Deeply pondering that someone might have collected his meat, Li Jing was very unhappy. He had no idea that Xiaoqing was unable to digest food, let alone the knockout drugs within the food. The clueless Xiaoqing returned home, snuggling up to her bundled-up son feeling safe, and went to bed. Early the next morning, in a daze, Xiaoqing helped Xiao Baozi brush his teeth. Opening the door, she saw a stern man crouching in front of the door. The doors even still had morning dew on it. He had most likely come really early, and had waited outside not wanting to disturb Xiaoqing. Come in. Xiaoqing lightly nudged his leg. The stern honest man entered through the door. Standing inside, he was at a loss on what he should do. Xiaoqing dragged over a chair. Let's eat together. In any case, the baby and I can't finish it all. Yan Hanqing at once waved his hands. Xiaoqing had already promised to give him medicine. He was already taking advantage of her. How could he possibly have the nerve to take her food as well? Furthermore, Xiaoqing is a single mother. Even if she has superhuman abilities, food is not easy to come by. He is a 7-foot man and has the ability to work. How could he have the conscience to take her food? However, Xiaoqing had already pushed him towards the table. Arranging a plate, she placed an egg inside. On the other side, Xiao Baozi was already moving, trying to climb up the chair with his short pudgy legs. Xiaoqing lifted up Xiao Baozi and pushed the bowl towards Yan Hanqing. Eat. That's perfect. Xiaoqing stood up and went over to the pot to package away the last egg within. Stuffing in some extra ham and bread, she passed it over to Yan Hanqing. Don't forget, the latest will be the day after tomorrow. Yan Hanqing nodded his head. Seeing he was eager to bring back the medicine to his mother, Xiaoqing did not keep him any longer. Let's go quickly. I want to see Auntie as well. Yan Hanqing knew. Xiaoqing was just worried that someone else would see the medicine in his hands and would have it stolen, thus decided to specially escort him. His heart warming up, he couldn't help think about the words Xiaoqing said that night. She said he was hers. Not even speaking about the list of things he still owes her. All those things are sufficient to have his life be used to repay this debt. Recalling that there are other certain methods to repay his debt, the good-natured Yan Hanqing didn't even have to touch his face to feel that his face was already scalding hot. Carrying Xiao Baozi, Xiaoqing and Yan Hanqing, one in front and one in the back, walked towards where he lived. Taking secret glances at Xiaoqing, he couldn't help but think, Xiaoqing is so gorgeous and is such a competent girl. Why would she even take a fancy to him? This must be his fantasy. Even if she had a kid, men willing to be with Xiaoqing would definitely be innumerable, waves after waves. How could it ever be his turn? Yan Hanqing pondered more and more. The more he thought, the more he believed that he must have heard wrong. Since he started doing his military service at the age of 18, until he retired because of an injury when he was 27, he had not even dated once. After all, within the army, there were scarcely any girls, especially within his department of the army. Due to the particularity, besides the military doctor, the rest were all men. As a result, a girl as soft and gentle as Xiaoqing was something Yan Hanqing was encountering for the first time. Thinking about it more and more, his palm moistened with perspiration. Chapter 14 First Investigation. The next day, Xiaoqing tidied up some things. Contacting a group of superhumans, Xiaoqing was seen as a wood element superhuman. Wood element superhumans are relatively popular, even if they were only of rank 1. In just a few moments, Xiaoqing was able to find a group willing to allow her to join them. A lot of the investigation squads were a combination of superhumans and ordinary people. After all, superhumans are relatively scarce. To collect a group that consists of solely superhumans, those groups would usually only be the survivor bases, high-ranked investigation squads. However, most of the time those squadrons weren't accepting new people. The group that Xiaoqing found did not have many members. Within the group there were 3 superhumans, a pair of siblings, a brother and a sister. The brother was taciturn and spoke little. He was tall and good-looking with delicate facial features. Too bad he had facial nerve paralysis. The little sister was energetic with large almond eyes and cherry lips. She was a beauty. Wearing suspenders revealing her navel, she chattered continuously. As a result, Xiaoqing was able to quickly understand why the older brother was called Gu Chuan, to take consideration, and the little sister was called Gu Panpan, to look around. The remaining superhuman was called a Tuesday nice and round. His ability was also the earth element. Besides the three superhumans, there was a young pair of regular husband and wife. Adding Xiaoqing and her group, it would be a total of 7 people. Arriving at the assembling spot, the other people were already there. When the woman of the young couple saw Xiaoqing, her face changed and she mumbled, "Coming out on an investigation, and she still brings her child. This isn't a vacation. They really don't want their lives." The husband at once pulled on his wife's sleeve, smiling. "Darun, please don't mind. My wife's words have always been a bit blunt. Darun equals term to call your superior / title of respect." Xiaoqing shook her head. "At the base, I don't have any acquaintances, and because my darling is still small, I can't be at ease to entrust him to anyone, thus I brought him. But don't worry, my baby is also a superhuman. Although he is limited in his senses, he is still somewhat useful. We definitely won't drag you guys down." Right when they heard that Xiao Baozi, that little bean, was also a superhuman, the pair of husband and wife's complexion changed, and they didn't speak any longer. Looking at them and acting rather passionately, Gu Panpan waved her hands. "Hurry and get in the car, so we can head out. This journey will be at least another hour." Xiaoqing brought Xiao Baozi and Yan Hanqing over to the car. Yan Hanqing was carrying a bag containing all the water and food Xiaoqing brought, and various equipment of some sort he had brought along. 7 people split among 2 cars. Xiaoqing, Yan Hanqing and the siblings were in one car, while the young couple and the fatty were in the other. On the road, Gu Panpan's mouth would not stop. Prior to coming to the apocalypse, she had earned her living in the field of entertainment, specifically gossiping about rumors and other hearsays. In the end, after listening to her incessant talking, Xiaoqing's entire body turned stupefied. Now she understood why Gu Chuan had facial paralysis. If she had a similar sister, she would also have facial paralysis. In fact, it would have been an even more severe facial paralysis. With great difficulty, they finally arrived at the destination. Xiaoqing escaped the car, as if she was digging out for freedom. Looking as if she hadn't fully expressed herself yet, Gu Panpan came out from the front passenger seat. She used her most joyous expression to face Xiaoqing. "If there's time, let's talk again." Xiaoqing. "I refuse." A party of 7 people, and Xiao Baozi, together entered the destination. Owing to a multiple of reasons, and even knowing that the metropolis area had the best goods, they did not dare to venture there in search of supplies. Instead, they decided on the smaller towns. Within the small town, there were many single-story houses. People concentration was not as high of a degree, thus there would be less zombies here than in the metropolis. With regards to their small investigation team, although there is less meat in the small town, the safety level was way higher. Once she got out of the car, Xiaoqing sensed that the man beside her had quickly raised his vigilance. This kind of vigilance was not only speaking of the mind, it also included the body. His muscles all turned into a state of high alert. If any kind of danger arose, he would be the first to react. No wonder he is from the military. Xiaoqing casted a sidelong glance towards Yan Hanqing. Taking the lead, Yan Hanqing followed closely behind, standing to Xiaoqing's rear left. This position on one hand would help prevent anyone from mounting a sneak attack on Xiaoqing, and on the other hand, if anything unexpected suddenly burst out, he would be able to rapidly help Xiaoqing block it. Having been assigned numerous bodyguard assignments to protect a lot of big figures, Xiaoqing naturally knew better than anyone else what Yan Hanqing's actions meant. Xiaoqing couldn't help but smirk a bit, her footsteps increasing slightly. In that second she had died, her heart was filled with an uncontainable resentment. She hated that woman who killed her and her baby, and she hated the traitorous Lin Qifan. Even so much that at a period of time, she had thought that in this world there were no good men left. All men were garbage, simply trash. However, at this second, Yan Hanqing had made Xiaoqing feel that no matter what Yan Hanqing's intentions were, to repay her kindness, or if it was just a habit, he was a good man. Before, owing to them being a colleague in the same field, had she helped Yan Hanqing. Now, she felt that her decision back then was the correct thing to do. Once we enter the small town, make sure not to separate. The taciturn Gu Chuan finally speaking out. This was the second statement Xiaoqing had heard him say since she had met him. Before that, the only things he had said was, "How are you? Let me introduce myself. I am Gu Ponpon's replacement. If we do separate and get besieged by zombies, it will be difficult to help. So everyone, please as much as possible do not leave too far from your area." Gu Panpan carefully reminded everyone. After they really stepped into the small town, usually when an investigation team went out, besides searching for goods, they would also search for survivors. Under circumstances where they can protect themselves, they would also bring the survivors back to the base. The reason is because survivors are a fundamental factor to the base. These survivors that stayed for a long time at the base would hand over half of their possession, with a portion of this half given to the newly discovered survivors. Of course, resembling what Xiaoqing considered as looking poor. If they encountered these kind of people who weren't in the best mood, they might not feel like rescuing people. Entering by foot into the small town, they remained their high vigilance and began to start their investigation. The houses of these countryside people usually have some hidden storages of provisions. Each year, they would save a bit of their harvest in a station they created to place the extra food. Therefore, Xiaoqing and the rest would go from house to house in attempts to find these provisions to bring back. Unfortunately, a small town that is relatively close to the survival base would have long ago had someone investigate this area. From the looks of it, most of the goods had been taken away already. After searching for quite a while, besides zombies, they did not even see a bit of grain. In fact, contrary to what they expected, they saw quite a few zombies. A lot of the families here had one of the members changed into a zombie, resulting in the whole family being turned by the bites from that single member. There were also families where everyone was turned into a zombie except for one single member. This type was comparably tragic. They would usually be bitten and gnawed on until they became a skeleton. I remember there were some granaries ahead. It's where the merchants contained the grains that he collected from the village. Atu pointed out in front. How about we have several people go over there to check it out? Chapter 15, Zombie Variation. Surrounding that granary was quite a few zombies. Speculating that there might be some provisions left in there, a few of them consulted a bit, then decided to head over in that direction. Xiaoqing had successively seen Gu Panpan and Gu Chuan's abilities. Gu Panpan, that little girl, unexpectedly had the strengthening ability. Once they started to fight, she had turned into a diamond Barbie, expertly tearing about the zombies. Gu Chuan, on the other hand, had the ice element. His current abilities were not strong, and were primarily there for assistance. Every time it would be Gu Chuan using his ice to freeze the zombie's feet. Once the zombie was stuck for that short duration, Gu Panpan acting like Hercules, and would twist the zombie's neck or smash their skull. Atu's ability was primarily for protection, defending the young couple and leading them forward. He would cut off the heads of the zombie that Gu Chuan froze, or Xiaoqing had binded. Yin Hanqing was silently standing by Xiaoqing's side, with a knife in his hand. As long as any of the zombies attempted to approach Xiaoqing, he would immediately get rid of them. The group of people quickly approached the granary. The granary looked peaceful, with only a few scattered zombies roaming around outside. Let's get this done quickly. We've been standing outside stupidly for too long, and have been attracting too many zombies. The chatterbox Gu Panpan uttered while still fighting reliably. A few nodding heads, and they proceeded to coordinate to kill the zombies. In fact, the zombies they were fighting individually did not have a high fighting strength, because their movements were sluggish, besides them being ugly, tenacious, and only dying if their heads were crushed. They were not particularly valiant. If they did not assemble in a group, even if it was a normal person, they could easily defeat several zombies. From her experience, besides her not being a person, Xiaoqing also knew about Air Dai, that peculiar zombie. Based on his actions, he was definitely intelligent. His learning capability was especially fast, and he was also capable of having emotions. Thinking about this further, could it be that Air Dai is the only zombie with these capabilities? It could be possible that zombies would evolve just like superhumans. Zombies could possibly evolve in a certain direction. For example, speed, the durability and toughness of their body, strength, or even their wisdom. Therefore, Xiaoqing did not relax. However, on the contrary, the young couple, seeing that killing zombies was as easy as chopping vegetables, had relaxed quite a bit. There must be a lot of things inside. Arriving at the entrance, the young couple impatiently pushed open the door. Atu immediately called out to them, "Watch out! There might be some more zombies." The wife rolled her eyes and mumbled to herself, "The door is close, how could there be more zombies? Even if there were some, I could easily handle one or two. Aren't you just scared that we might steal some of the supplies?" Atu felt helpless, but he still gave the young couple an armor, made from soil using his supernatural abilities. Owing to him being a rank 1, he was only able to form a thin layer of earth plating around their vital areas. If there were any unexpected accidents, it should be able to resist a while. Speak about it and it will happen. Just when they were still worried about accidents occurring, the woman pushed open the door, and a black shadow dropped from the sky. The woman screamed out, her appearance turning pale. She turned and tried to flee, yet she was thrown to the ground by the shadow. The husband, upon seeing this, tried to reach out to pull her away, when he discovered that the black shadow was actually a zombie. His face turned green. Turning his heels, he scrambled away, not caring at all that his wife was still on the ground. Luckily, Xiaoqing reacted quickly. Extending her hand, green vines reached out and quickly bound the zombie's arms and legs. Atu also launched his power. Raising a chunk of the floor, he used it to knock over the zombie. Taking advantage of the situation, the woman staggered up and ran back towards the group. While she was attempting to escape, the zombie had already thrown off his bindings. His speed was extremely fast, not even mentioning the average zombie. Even comparing him with a rank 1 speed-focused superhuman, one would be unable to precisely determine who was faster. Xiaoqing knitted her eyebrows. The vines she had used was a portion of her powers. Thus she was able to feel that when her vines were restraining the zombie, sharp thorns penetrated through. This clearly showed that his defensive abilities was average, and it was just his speed that stood out from the rest. Gu Chuan, restrict its movements. Although Gu Chuan was unsure of what Xiaoqing wanted, he still quickly released his ability. Yet the speed of the zombie was just much too quick. He was just simply unable to freeze its pair of legs like before. Sparing no effort, he even converted the humidity of the atmosphere into ice as well in attempts to capture the zombie. That area's temperature quickly plummeted, causing the zombie's body to have icicles hanging on it. While the temperature quickly dropped, Atu unceasingly created holes near the areas where the zombie was stepping through. Although the impact wasn't significant, it was still able to cause the zombie to slow down his pace a bit. Seeing the opportunity, Xiaoqing released another set of vines to bind the zombie. Originally, she planned on fighting the zombie in close contact. However, Gu Panpan and Yin Hanqing, one on the left and one on the right, were both running over there. Xiaoqing's vines were known to be the lowest variation of vegetation, the anesthesia qualities it brings having basically no significant impacts towards the zombie. The zombie was quickly able to free its upper body. Right when it was about to escape, the diamond Barbie-like Gu Panpan threw her clenched fist at its face, causing it to cave in. But even with this, the zombie did not die. Instead, it rolled on the ground, looking as if it wanted to escape. Before he could escape, Yin Hanqing followed up by using his knife and directly stabbed it into the zombie's skull, penetrating through. The zombie's body bounced one last time, then stopped moving. Xiaoqing let out a sigh of release. Narrowing her eyes, she was already planning on opening up the zombie's body for its crystal. This kind of zombie variation, its crystal must contain way more energy than the average zombie. That zombie is really peculiar. Let me take a look first. Xiaoqing approached the zombie as she said this. Putting on a show of flipping over the zombie's corpse, the young couple felt impatient watching Xiaoqing. But at the same time, they did not want to see the zombie's scary appearance at all. Gu Panpan and Atu gave the young couple an examination. After all, the two of them were ordinary people. If by any chance they were grabbed and bitten, they would be infected. Xiaoqing slightly peering over towards the remaining Gu Chuan and Yin Hanqing. Then realizing that they weren't paying attention to her, she quickly penetrated the zombie's skull with her fingernail. With practiced movements, she found the crystal, and without looking at its size, she transferred it directly into her space dimension. Chapter 16, Survivor. Why are you sweating so much? Were you frightened? Gu Panpan gave the woman a simple inspection. Discovering that there were no wounds, the pale-faced woman wiped the sweat on her face. Obviously, I was frightened. That zombie came jumping out of nowhere, and I almost became the food in its stomach. As long as you aren't injured, in comparison to everything else, it is definitely better. Gu Panpan patted the woman's shoulder. The woman only smiled, but her face became all the more paler. Leave, why are you just standing there? Her husband had come over, patting the woman as well, but the woman became startled, hurriedly repeating, Leave, leave, leave. Has your spirit been scared off? The man laughed, pulling the woman to follow. This time it was a two clearing the way. He was an earth elemental superhuman with the highest defensive capabilities. He was the best suited for this role. This time, everyone was cautious and solemn when they were entering. Not discovering another zombie, they just saw piles of bones spread out on the ground. It appears that these people have died quite some time ago. So much provisions. Gu Panpan stared foolishly at the granary. She did not expect that the granary would unexpectedly have this much food remaining. It must be because that variation zombie was protecting this area. Thus most of the food provisions weren't taken away by others. The others went to the surrounding granaries to take a look. As expected, not even a drop of rice could be found to be remaining in the others. It may be assumed that the piles of bones might be the remains of the previous investigation teams. It must be that they plundered all the granaries all around, and the ones that they sent over to this granary were all killed by the variation zombie. Since they were able to harvest so much, they probably didn't care about a little extra food provisions. Not to mention they would be worried about how this granary might have quite a few variation zombies. Thus they just decided to depart. Now that had just benefited us. Gu Panpan was extremely excited. Even a two echoed in agreement with Gu Panpan. I also think that was what happened. Our luck is really awesome. With these provisions, even if we have to hand over half of it, we would still get quite a bit. Go open the car quickly. Otherwise how else would we be able to transport the provisions? Xiaoqing was relatively calm and collected. After all, this mother and son duo did not have much demands in regards to food. I'll go open it. Gu Chuan volunteered, and Yan Hanqing promptly followed him forward as well. Everyone else kept guard at the entrance, resting a bit inside the granary. The young couple even took out some things, and began cooking some dried meat. After turning the dried meat into a pot of stew, and mixing it with other rations, it could easily replenish their physical strength. Waiting for Gu Chuan and Yan Hanqing to bring the two cars over to this area, the rest of the group began to eat. In reality, Xiaoqing did not need to eat at all. However, she couldn't reveal that she was too different from an average person. Thus she followed along with the others, and ate a small portion of the provisions, feeding some of the meat stew to Xiao Baozi. Then she found a convenient place where she could nearly puke everything out to settle her upset stomach. After resolving the issues of satisfying their hunger, the group of people began to move the provisions into the car. Everyone was happy and excited. Right in the beginning, they accordingly divvied up the portions of the provisions. The three superhumans would each receive 20%, and the couple would each receive 10%. The newly added members Yan Hanqing and Xiaoqing added up together would obtain 20%. The reason for this is because they had just recently entered. Not to mention one of them was an ordinary person, while the other was just a rank 1 female with elemental superhuman. Saying it bluntly, it was because Gu Chuan and the rest did not have a clear understanding of Xiaoqing and Yan Hanqing's fighting strength. Thus this arrangement was made. Gu Chuan and Gu Panpan stared at each other face to face. Then Gu Panpan stepped forward. Qing Jiejie, even though you just joined, your performance throughout this journey was definitely seen by everyone else on this team. Therefore, I feel that Qing Jiejie's group just receiving 20% would be too little. So, after discussing it with my brother, we decided to split another 10% to you guys. Before Gu Panpan had even finished her words, the man from the young couple, unable to hold back his voice, loudly exclaimed, "Wait, I don't mind if you want to divide them an extra portion, but where are we going to get this extra 10% from?" Gu Panpan couldn't help but wrinkle her eyebrows. The nominally chosen leader was Gu Chuan. Even overlooking this point, and just basing it according to fighting strength or contribution, Gu Chuan and her were the highest. With this man's words, isn't this just simply not giving them any face at all? The 10% that will be given to Qing Jiejie and her group will be from the 40% share of us siblings share. We will have 30% and Qing Jiejie will have 30%. You can relax, we will not touch your 20%. Gu Panpan expressionlessly spoke those words. Saying this much, the young couple calmed down. On the contrary, Atu felt embarrassed. How about this? I will put forth enough for half of the share we owe Xiaoqing, and you could put forth half as well. Then, we could just combine the 2 portions to collect the 10% needed to give to Xiaoqing's group. No need. We just recently joined. Getting 20% is already more than enough. Xiaoqing didn't really care about the food provisions. She only cared about the crystals. Okay, let's return to the base first, then divide the portions. Gu Panpan spoke in a concise manner. Let's return. Not rejecting the suggestion, they packed up the materials and items and set off. A normal investigation squad wouldn't stay outside overnight, because during the night was the zombies' rule. There were just too many unpredictable dangers. Furthermore, Xiaoqing and them had already harvested quite a bonus, and didn't really need to continue investigating anymore. Thus doing one final sweep around the area, they walked back towards the return route. The car filled up with all the provisions they found was a bit slower in comparison to before, because from time to time several people would even have to get out to clear the road of some zombies. Unexpectedly, they weren't able to return to the base before it got dark. There's a house up ahead. Let's clear it up and stay for the night. Then we can leave early the next morning. Atu suggested. Traveling in the dark would be too dangerous. During the evening is when the zombies are most active. I also agree that we should stay for the night. After Gu Panpan also agreed with Atu, everyone else didn't have any objections. Then Atu went in search for a house door that was still in good condition. In the countryside, a majority of the doors were either made of wood or metal. Seeing a tightly closed secure metal door that looked relatively secure and sage, Atu at once dashed towards the door to open it. However, before he could open the door opened up a slit. A person with lush green eyes appearing to be only made of skin and bones, probably starved for quite a while, revealed himself from the small opening. Who are you guys? Chapter 17 Strange. Atu was startled that he actually jumped. Jumping back one step, he subconsciously released his power. Until he realized that the thing in front of him was a human, and not something else. Did he relax and let out a breath? We are an investigation squad from the survivors of S-City's survivor base. We were just passing by this area. Is it possible for us to lodge with you for a night? That person used a strange gaze to give Atu a glance, then opened her mouth to speak. Sure. But what is a survivor base? Atu looked around at his surroundings. Is it okay if you let us in first? Then I can explain everything to you? Come in. That person retreated, and allowed Xiaoqing and the rest to enter. Xiaoqing knitted her eyebrows as she entered. She had a feeling that the person's gaze was a bit too strange. As for why it was strange, Xiaoqing wasn't able to pinpoint it. After entering, Xiaoqing and the rest realized that it was a big courtyard that they were in. Within the courtyard, there was a dried-up thin woman carrying a child, facing towards the doorway with a lifeless look in her eyes. She was wearing an outer coat, loosely slung over her shoulders with more than half of her chest hanging out in the air. From her neck until her stomach, traces of purple scars could be seen. When Xiaoqing and the rest arrived by her side, the woman squeezed her child to her chest in alarm and continuously uttered, "Don't eat my child, please don't eat my child." It was then that Xiaoqing realized what she was squeezing to her chest was absolutely not a child. Instead, it was a tiny filthy quilt for a bed wrapped around a small pillow. Xiaoqing's gaze quickly became cold, not saying much. On the contrary, the person leading the way made haste in saying, "She's a lunatic. Her child was probably bitten by her man and turned into a zombie. Seeing that she was so pitiful, we offered her some shelter and care. She is somewhat good-looking." After the man from the young couple mumbled these few words, his wife immediately slapped him hard. Entering the house, the person leading the way let out a loud yell. "Boss, there's some survivor base people that has come." Following his yell to his boss, several gloomy and cold looks landed on Xiaoqing's body. Within the house there were quite a few people. Leaning unsteadily from side to side, a majority of the people there were super skinny and wore shabby clothing. However, the boss he called out was instead wearing neat and tidy clothes, looking as if he was trying to put on airs. "Survivor base?" The boss walked over. Seeing him up close, he looked fairly upright, except for the triangular pair of eyes he was born with. When he smiled, his eyes narrowed, making it look treacherous no matter how you look at it. After walking over, he first drew out a cigarette, He handed one over to Atu, one over to Gu Chuan, one over to the man from the young couple, and one over to Yin Hanqing. Gu Chuan and Yin Hanqing did not accept it while Atu and the husband accepted the offer. Atu smiled a bit, then happily stated, "Since the arrival of the apocalypse, I don't know how long have I gone without smoking these rare goods." What Atu said was the truth. Since the apocalypse, people barely had enough to eat. Where on earth would they be able to find cigarettes to smoke? The boss brought his lighter over to Atu to help him light his cigarette. After lighting up his cigarette, he laughed. Would these beautiful women also like a cigarette? Gu Panpan and the woman hurriedly shook their heads and hands to express that they didn't want to smoke a cigarette. The boss also did not force it and beamed. "I have also heard that there was a survivor base ahead. Constructed pretty well. I've always wanted to bring my group of brothers over there. However, we have a lot of people. Once we start journeying towards the survivor base, who knows how many brothers would die. Thus, we still haven't tried to go there. However, now that we met you guys definitely have some skill to travel out here. Could I bother you guys to escort us to the survivor base?" The man from the young couple patted his chest. "No problem," regarding his rash response, not even mentioning Gu Chuan. Even Gu Panpan knitted her eyebrows and frowned, reproaching him for speaking out too quickly. "Since that's the case, that would be the best. Please come in and take a good rest tonight. We will have to leave early tomorrow morning." Leading the way, the boss allowed the man who was leading earlier to show them to the rooms inside where they could rest. After waiting for the person who was guiding them to leave, Gu Panpan began to speak. "What were you doing agreeing so quickly? We're going back to the survivor base anyways. We are at an advantage anyways." The man says as if it was a matter of course. "Besides, bringing them wouldn't be a bother anyways." "You are a bother," Gu Chuan coldly stated. "What do you mean?" The man stared at him blankly, but Gu Chuan wasn't going to bother with him anymore. Directly going to the corner, he sat down. Xiaoqing also brought Yin Hanqing to find an area to sit down. The man, feeling a bit awkward, didn't continue to say anything. Quickly, nighttime arrived. A person came knocking on the door to ask Xiaoqing and the rest to join them for dinner. The group then followed them down. Xiaoqing took Xiao Baozi out of the back knapsack she was carrying him in. Holding him against her chest, she took out a milk bottle from her bag. Within the milk bottle, however, was not milk powder. Instead, it was the chicken stock she had made previously. She removed the layer of oil on top, so when the time came to heat it up, it would be ready to drink. As well, Xiao Baozi didn't even really need the soup to be heated anyways. He originally wasn't a normal human, so he wasn't scared for the cold to reach his stomach. Xiao Baozi held on to the milk bottle, not letting go, while Xiaoqing sat by the table. By the table sat two people. One was the boss while the other was a dirty-looking youngster. Everyone else was sitting in the corner, gnawing on some rations. "Wow, there's meat!" The young couple's eyes lighted up with excitement. After all, since the apocalypse, they had barely had any chances to eat any meat. On the tables besides meat, there were also green vegetables. A full 4 dishes and 1 soup. Although this arrangement, if seen before, it wouldn't be considered anything special. It is the apocalypse now. This would definitely be considered a luxurious meal. The boss made an inviting gesture. "Everyone has traveled far to get here and are my guest. Please sit and don't be polite." The Gu siblings and Xiaoqing looked each other in the eye, then noticed that the other party's eyes have gradually dropped in temperature. It was only that young couple, and Atu, who were still extremely happy and excited. "Everyone please eat, don't be polite." The boss smiled, picking up a piece of meat. He then placed it inside the bowl in front of Xiaoqing. Chapter 18. Changed into a zombie. "This smells so good. I haven't eaten meat in so long." The young couple at once raked in several pieces of meat into their own bowls. Since the apocalypse, meat has become a rarity among food. Xiaoqing did not make any movements. She picked up a mushroom with her chopsticks, then swallowed it down. When the boss asked her about it, she only politely smiled. "I'm on a diet." Once the host and guests stopped eating, having finished up all the dinner, the ones ought to rest went to rest. Everyone was preserving their strength to prepare to leave this ghostly area. Xiaoqing was pacing back and forth within the courtyard with the silent Yin Hanqing following behind her. There was no one in the courtyard, just a small oil lamp. It was unclear where the oil lamp was found, the light from the oil lamp shining through the opening, appearing quite sinister. Why aren't you asking me why I was preventing you from eating the meat? Xiaoqing quietly asked. Yan Hanqing shook his head. I can tell. Then that's good. Xiaoqing held on to Xiao Baozi's hand, letting him unsteadily walk forward, deliberately lowering her voice, so one wouldn't be able to hear if she was excited or angry. She said, Ah Qing, I want to kill. Yan Hanqing was somewhat expressionless. Never has anyone ever called him Ah Qing. That was intimate. This made him unable to contain his blush, so much that he even forgot to block Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing supported Xiao Baozi as he learned to walk, his steps exasperatingly slow. I'm not a good person, but I still do have a bit of a conscience. Smell the wind. That smell is quite heavy, lingering on the tip of my nose. At all times, it reminds me of what has actually occurred here. Yan Hanqing's nose wasn't as alert as Xiaoqing's. However, the difference was that big. He became silent again. The obstructive words he was going to say wasn't able to come out at all. After all, those people were already bad to the bones. Not even mentioning just watching it happen, but even personally murdering. He was capable of doing it. Tonight we'll definitely meet with mishap. Xiaoqing decisively decided this. Her sixth sense told her that. Yan Hanqing didn't say any words, and just followed behind Xiaoqing. There weren't a lot of vacant rooms. Therefore, when it was time to sleep at night, Xiaoqing and Gu Panpan were sleeping together in one room. If it weren't for the fact that during the daytime they were so busy, thus causing Gu Panpan to immediately fall asleep, Xiaoqing reckoned she would have been listening to gossip for the entire night. Gu Panpan was deep asleep, whereas Xiaoqing didn't sleep at all. Drawing Xiao Baozi close, she quietly curled up on the bed. By the time when it was midnight, a sudden blood-curdling shriek filled the air. It came from the room next door. Xiaoqing's expression immediately changed. She quickly crawled out of bed, carrying Xiao Baozi, and not caring about the hazy Gu Panpan who just awoke, she headed towards the outside. Not for the other's sake, but to find out who let the scream. She discovered it was the man from the young couple who let out that scream. Originally, Xiaoqing had a premonition that something was going to happen tonight. However, she did not think that it would have occurred within their group. Probably not sleeping for the same reason, Xiaoqing arrived early, but arriving just as early was the Yan Hanqing, who was warned ahead of time by her and Gu Chuan. The boss bringing over some people arrived a bit late. When they did arrive, it was just when Gu Chuan was about to kick open the door. Once the door was open, everyone was shocked. The man from the young couple, at this moment, had his lower body on the bed, and his upper body drooped down onto the ground. His round eyes were opened wide, and his face had a few deep bloody scars. His throat had already been torn apart. It was evident that he was not among the living anymore. The woman was leaning over his body, emitting a weird chewing sound. Hearing the door being opened, the woman turned around. Her face, especially her mouth, was covered with blood, pale complexion. Her skin already appeared to be rotting like a corpse. Move! Gu Chuan's expression changed. With the point of his hand, his ice elemental superhuman abilities was immediately launched. In mere seconds, the woman's feet quickly hardened to ice, gluing the sole of her feet onto the ground. The woman had roughly just turned into a zombie, thus her reaction was relatively slow. Blanking for a moment, she suddenly became angered. Lifting her leg, the ice underneath, and her leg broke apart into pieces. Xiaoqing did not saying anything further, but her vines had already binded the woman's feet. Yet with a big vigorous struggle, it too was broken apart. Yan Hanqing was already clenching his dagger, and had arrived in front of the woman. With his knife he stabbed it into the woman's upper abdomen. However, realizing that she has already changed into a zombie, and that stabbing her at the upper abdomen wouldn't be effective at all, he quickly drew out the dagger. But, the woman's fingernails glittering like frost, and snow came down quick and slapped him away. Yan Hanqing was only able to cross both his hands across his chest when he was knocked flying. For some unknown reason, the woman's strength was way stronger than the average zombie. Effortlessly she lifted up her leg, breaking apart the ice and vines. Then she walked over toward Gu Chuan and Xiaoqing's direction. The boss couldn't harbor away his powers anymore. Pointing his finger, a ball of fire came flying out. Yet when the fire arrived and hit the woman's body, before it could catch on fire, the fire was already extinguished. Conveniently drawing out a knife from a person from the surrounding, she lifted it up and jumped up, suddenly stabbing the knife towards the woman's neck area. The woman shifted her body slightly, Following, the knife chopped down to her collarbone. Still clutching the knife, Xiaoqing had no choice but to relax her grip. She faced the woman's claw, meeting force with force. Having ate so many crystals, her strength was naturally stronger than the woman's by a lot. Just seeing the woman retreat a step and indignantly howl. There was no second howl. Xiaoqing had already grasped her by the arm and given her a shoulder throw, causing the woman to land heavily on the ground, rotting flesh flying everywhere. Not waiting for her to crawl back up, Xiaoqing already punched the back of the woman's head, directly concaving the back of her head. After that punch, the woman's entire body embedded into the ground a few inches. Gu Panpan, who arrived late, swallowed her saliva. In reality, Xiaoqing is a strength-based superhuman, right?